Hey guys, Triptych here. I've been really enjoying this game recently called Mechabellum. It is an auto-battler where you basically place your units and then when the round starts you fight each other across without having any control over what they do. And it's actually very easy to learn but difficult to master. There's a lot of intricacy that goes into it. And so I just want to make a few videos about the intricacies that really interest me and that I find very funny. So this is kind of a noob game. My opponent and I do not play the smartest. However, I did have a couple interactions that were very good that I wanted to showcase here. So for our starting cards, I have chosen Speed Specialist, which is one of my favorites. I love Speed Specialist because no matter how long the game goes on, if you haven't done crawlers, you can switch crawlers with speed and it'll be amazing. I like the fact that no matter what strategy you're using, you can just suddenly pull out speed crawlers, and if they haven't been counting them up until now, they might be screwed. So I did get Crawler Sledgehammer, so he knows it's coming though, because he sees the crawlers right here. My opponent is Giant Specialist, which kind of scares me, and he has Marksman Sledgehammer. So basically, right now, this is a winning comp for him, because his Marksman will kill my tanks, his tanks will kill my crawlers. My tanks do okay against his tanks, but in general, he has the advantage, and it's up to me to reverse the counter on this. So, naturally, being Speed Specialist, I decide to say screw it, and we'll get some more crawlers. I do like the dynamic of having a large number of crawlers heading towards your enemy throughout the game, because that way, even if they're killing your crawlers every turn, and yes, they could be getting experience off of them, but it works interestingly because these tanks already one-shot the crawlers. So if his tanks get experience from killing the crawlers and they level up, yes, that could be a problem later if I have trouble killing the tanks, but it doesn't make them better at killing the crawlers. So even if I have waves of crawlers going at him every single turn, it doesn't hurt me that much to be losing them. And because level 1 crawlers are also quite good, like compared to level 2 or level 3 crawlers, they're still good if they reach the enemy and get to do melee damage. So if you just have waves of crawlers going, then later in the game you can just randomly upgrade them with Mechanical Rage or Replicate or Subterranean Blitz, and all of a sudden they get suddenly better, and they might randomly take a tower off the enemy. So I decided to go for this 5 crawler build, and now there's different ways to position, and the game will actually recommend a lot of crawler positionings like vertical behind the tower and all spread out front and back. These are defensive builds. These are builds when you are assuming that your crawlers are all going to die and their only job is to distract enemy marksmen while your bigger units do the fighting. And so they do that by, they come in trickles. They trickle in. First a unit of crawlers, then another unit of crawlers, and the idea is to maximize the time. You do not want that if you're doing a crawler build. If you're doing a crawler build, you want them all straight in a line so that they arrive at the exact same time, so that the enemy only has a few seconds to kill them before they're in melee, and the other crawlers can take advantage of that. So I go ahead and line them up completely to try to get that rush. And my opponent, seeing he already has the advantage, he just sort of gets, he actually buys for offense and defense upgrades and a unit of Mustangs. So, like I say, we were both noobs. He is not using the best strategy here. And he does even put up a sentry missile, which is going to blow up my stuff. And the 5 crawlers versus 2 tanks come in for the swarm. And you can see the damage output of these tanks is actually not very high against things like tanks and even against marksmen. However, they're enough to one-shot crawlers, and that's all that really matters in the beginning. So then we see the Intensive Training card, which is one of the best cards in the game. And the moment I see this, I say, I am going Rhino Crawler. The reason for this is the Rhino also does very well. It's a big melee unit. It does well with speed. It does well with crawlers because the things that handle swarms don't do as well against single targets. And the weakness of the Rhino is if you put it in the front, it might die a lot. And if it dies, it doesn't get experience, it doesn't rank up, and it's useless forever. Intensive training allows you to train a unit even if it isn't getting kills, and it is the best thing for Rhinos. And there are several other units that it benefits too, but I look at this and I was like, oh, I'm going Rhino Crawler, and I'm just going to rank up the Rhinos through this repeatedly. So that is my plan, but I'll have to wait a little while to put it into action because I just don't have the money yet. So my opponent gets the arc lights. Now, positioning is very important, and the theme of this video is positioning. This is a terrible position. It might seem like they are safer if I was bringing, more firepower units. However, the arc light, because the arc light also one-shots these swarm units, and it fires pretty fast, the most important thing about the arc light is how often it shoots. And that's why the range upgrade, which otherwise might not be so good, is actually nice because it might give you 1 second more of arc light firing, one more shot. And so the good position for the arc light would actually be right next to the tanks. So it gets a tiny bit more shooting at crowds. And that actually is going to cause problems later because I'm going so heavily into the swarm. Now you'll notice that these level 2 crawlers are still one-shot by tanks and not one-shot by arc lights though. So as you get experience, as you get kills, you can level them up, and each time they level, it adds their original stats back. So a level 2 has twice the stats of a level 1. And there, he missiles me super effectively. I was hoping my shield would block the missile. I was actually hoping these guys would not walk into it, and that way the shield would stick around to protect against missiles. I actually care about the shield more than I care about the lives of these marksmen. But sadly, it does go down. Now, the reason I got those 2 marksmen, by the way, is because he has Giant Specialist. And I know that later I'm going to go Rhinos. I'm going to go Speed Intensive Training Rhino. And so in that turn when I had 350, the best thing for me to do was just get 2 level 1 marksmen. They also protect because my entire army is ground-based. I can't shoot air except for these 2. And so marksmen are a great thing to have 1 or 2 of. They just protect you. And as you'll see here, they did pretty great for a 200 credit investment. So yes, now my opponent is going for range phoenixes using the item. I train up some tanks a bit. This is effective because the missile does 5,000, so level 2 tanks will not die to a missile. Even though the missile is kind of taking out the crawlers that are around the tanks, that will help. It'll mean the tanks are still around. And there we have the Rhino. Now, this positioning right here is the point of the video. So the crawlers move at 19 per second right now because they're 16 plus 3. The Rhino does as well. The enemy has tanks that are good at killing swarms, and he has marksmen that are good at killing big units. I want to make it so his shooting is all messed up because of my positioning. And right now, the Rhino is going to go in first, the sniper is going to latch on, and it's going to kill the Rhino. I know this. However, I am planning to get Mechanical Rage, which increases the speed of the unit, on the crawlers, not on the Rhino. So I placed him right there because next turn, the crawlers are going to be faster and they're going to move up. And you can actually layer this when you have units moving different speeds and units with different ranges. So now, yeah, this time around I get missiled, it doesn't kill them. He sniped my Rhino, I'm dead. But the crawlers get in because the tanks were also shooting at the Rhino. It's just not enough. His arc lights do enough to those crawlers that even though the crawlers reach the enemy line, they don't get to get kills. And here, this is a bit concerning because Intelligent Marksman comes up, which means he can get a lot more ranks on these snipers, these marksmen, and they're going to be really high level. However, I am going for swarms. I'm not actually going Rhinos. The Rhinos are just here to distract. And this is where we get the really cool interaction of positioning. I also take the speed upgrade. This is like the best thing in the game. You can spend 50 credits to increase the speed of your units for 1 round. Which means you are wasting 50, but, oh boy, there are units out there that they'll kill the crawlers unless the crawlers get 3 extra speed and then the crawlers win, like storm callers in particular. This is a great defense against storm callers, which are otherwise very powerful. So this time around, I have Mechanical Rage crawlers, but I still have the Rhinos in front so that they line up perfectly. And you'll see I get a beautiful interaction here where the Mustangs latch onto the Rhino. because it was in front when they were targeting. And then a second later, let's see, okay, so the tanks are doing these. However, the marksmen, for the most part, latch onto the crawlers because the Mustangs and the tanks are further up. So there can actually be situations like this where using units at different speed, you can actually force the enemy to latch poorly. And obviously, eventually they do get around to the Rhinos. But because of the way that one interaction was just so cool. And you'll notice if the positioning was even slightly off, it would not work that way. Because of the distance between the two of us and because of how it's placed, if this Rhino here is one space back, the Mustangs don't latch onto the Rhino, they kill the crawlers. If he's one space forward, then the marksmen latch onto the Rhino and they kill him right away. So this positioning is like pixel perfect for this to happen. However, at this point, I have achieved superiority on the front line because of this. I wasn't planning it to be this perfect, but because of the perfect interaction between the snipers latching onto the crawlers and the tanks, you know, surviving the missile, I have reached the point I win the game because now I can crawler flank and he can't stop it. So yeah, he tries the missiles again. I'm keeping in mind I could shield against the missiles, but I just don't have the need to. I have Photon, and since I believe the missiles are actually hitting the Rhinos, no, okay, they're still hitting the tanks, and they're still killing crawlers, but it's okay. So yeah, now I add the, I was holding on to armor enhancement for the Rhinos so that they could basically become immune to the Mustangs. This is the one I actually prefer because armor enhancement Rhinos can really do nasty things. Interestingly enough, if you have an armor enhancement Rhino at like level 2 or 3, it actually slows down the speed of hackers as well. So I don't know exactly how hacker damage is done, but it does like 600 damage per sec. It does it like a continuous beam, and I have definitely noticed that like level 2 or even level 3 armor enhancement on a Rhino slows down the hacker a lot. I mean, it also has tons of hit points, but if you have a hacker Rhino contest going on, it doesn't do nothing to have that armor upgrade. So yes, at this point, I've won the game. And yeah, at this point I go ahead and I decide to snag Giant Hunter, because that's one of my favorite things to do, because I am pre-countering. Because I have set him up so that the correct answer is kind of Vulcans. And he is Giant Specialist. So as a Giant Specialist, getting annihilated by crawlers, I also believe I actually got, subsidized crawlers decreases the upgrade cost of crawlers. So my crawlers are devastating. He should probably go Vulcans. And if he does, I'll have to go armor enhancement on the Rhinos so they can survive the Vulcan shot. Or maybe just a bunch of Phoenixes at this point. But basically, I'm anticipating the Vulcan. And he doesn't actually play the Vulcan, and the game's over. But that was actually... Sometimes I will take Giant Hunter if I'm running a crawler build, even if there are no Giants, because they might want to counter the crawlers, and if they do, I'll start getting money. And at this point, I also decide to take an interesting upgrade, which is the range upgrade for tanks. Range is not always useful, but it's more important because it's related to positioning. Range is what you use to change the order that your guys fight in. So up until now, my tanks were kind of moving forward, and they might take some shots from these other tanks and from the enemy marksmen after the chaff gets cleared out, and especially if he's running Phoenix, the Phoenixes will probably end up killing my tanks. So in this case, I run the range enhancement because that will keep them out of the fight, and even better, when he missiles me, and my tanks only have 1,500 hit points left, they'll have range, so they won't even get close. And it doesn't even matter that they took all that damage, because they're alive and they're shooting, and the enemy's not going to be able to reach them. And so at this point, I throw down a missile just to defend against flanks. I get crawler replication. Now over here, this is just a quick note on flanking crawlers. Level 2 crawlers are very difficult to counter on a flank. You can probably do it with a level 2 arc light if you do elite recruitment, But if it has like mechanical rage, you're going to need 2 arc lights or a Vulcan or something. And level 1 Mustangs will not counter level 2 crawlers, especially with tech. So if someone is crawler flanking you like this, you can start to set up arc lights to defend against it if you would like. But your best bet is probably just missiles, sentry missiles. Just 1 missile there, 1 missile there. Kill them off until you either get defenses up or just keep missiling them every single turn from then on. It also is sometimes the case with wasps. If someone's wasp flanking you, it might be a situation where the counter to kill them is so expensive and difficult that it's better to just missile them every time. And this is the defense against such things. I had a game where someone flanked me with double crawlers and a melting point, and it was really dangerous. However, the important thing about flanks is the person who flanks cannot place shields. So on the front line, if you place 10 missiles, the other guy can place shields and protect. But a flanking force can never protect against sentry missiles. So when he had a melting point and 2 crawler units, I just put 2 missiles there to kill off the crawlers every single round, and that was the answer. And that's why putting too much investment into a flank isn't that good. You can have devastating flanks, but they can always missile you, and there's nothing you can do to stop them missiling your flank. And so we'll just accelerate this through really quickly. I didn't even notice these units. This was just a spare. However, they did not make it. Yeah, I just added a few more level 1 marksmen in case he did go that Vulcan. And you'll notice he does have these Phoenixes, and for much of the game, my only counter to the Phoenixes was 2 marksmen. And going into Mustangs to counter those Phoenixes would have been a very big mistake. At this point, the opponent surrendered, so it'll just show as a DC, and I'm about to sign out. But it is worth noting, I did not lean into a counter for the Phoenixes, because if you have a front line that's very powerful, you only really need 1 marksman. Probably 2 in case they call in a missile, but 2 to 3 marksmen will kill any number of Phoenixes as long as you are winning the ground game. And actually, I've recently found when I play Phoenix, I actually have started really preferring the Launcher Overload upgrade over the Range Enhancement upgrade. Because if you do get in this situation where the Phoenixes just aren't doing much, the range will keep them kind of safe if there's other snipers going down, you know, if it's sniper versus sniper. But actually, a lot of the time, you just want your... It does double their output. It doubles their attack rate, which is double damage, but also against like swarms, it means they kill them twice as fast. And if you get Launcher Overload on your Phoenixes, you can actually get rid of like wasps and fangs with them pretty effectively. That was a random tangent. Anyway, I really just wanted to showcase the way that these positionings, these Rhinos would not have worked if this positioning was slightly off. And you notice he was getting more marksmen, and like this level 3 marksman does quite a lot of damage. So this is just a situation where positioning can absolutely change the tide of battle. I was winning fights, and he was probably kind of wondering, like, why is he winning? Why are these Rhinos getting in? And the truth of the matter is they wouldn't do so well if they were a couple pixel forward or a couple pixels back. At least for the turns when it mattered. Once they got levels and photon coding, it kind of doesn't matter as much because I've already won. But there was definitely a turning point where if he had killed them those first couple rounds, ranked up as marksman faster, I would have not been able to continue what I was doing, because then he would have been free to get a Vulcan. Alright, hope you guys enjoyed. That is Triptych signing off.